Okay, welcome everybody. Today is August the 6th, Sunday evening, about 30 minutes after the weekly open. Let's cook up the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. So hopefully everybody had a good weekend. I saw some pretty crazy shenanigans going on. Bitcoin was pretty much untradeable, but saw some altcoins just going wild, most notably YGG. Just classic cartel games. So hopefully some of the viewers were able to catch some of that. I missed all of it because I was, in classic weekend vacation mode. I don't really trade during the weekends during the bear market. It's just not really my style or approach. But this was one of those rare weekends where there's actually some pretty good opportunities on the perps. So hopefully some of you guys were able to capitalize on that. So let's go ahead and get into things. Let's start off with the news events. We actually have some stuff to pay attention to this week. So starting off on Monday, we have the FOMC speaker. This isn't really going to be something that we care about. However, on Thursday, we have US CPI. So US CPI is going to be the main event for the week. On Friday, it's also worth noting US PPI. But definitely most notably anticipating the volatility for the CPI. So it's your classic, try not to carry positions over into that unless you're super comfy on them. Definitely anticipate some whipsaw trading opportunities. So I'll be active on Thursday most likely. Let's go ahead and get into the boomers real quick. Going to keep it super light. Not actively trading these days, but it's just worth noting. The boomer indexes, both the NAS and the S&P, have, continue to just rip up all year long. If you watched my previous outlooks, you've heard the same kind of message that you don't really want to short these things. You want to play long continuation. We're at a point where they are starting to really show exhaustion as they've traded into major resistance zones. I still wouldn't be interested in selling these at all. But it is worth noting that they're kind of teetering on the brink right now. If these guys start to, kind of reverse course and trend down, that's most likely going to decimate crypto markets. So it's definitely worth paying respects to these things. The correlation to the upside is really not that, noticeable, but I'm quite sure that the correlation to the downside will be. So we still need to respect these, even though we're not actively trading them. So keeping it short. That's pretty much it. I've really covered the majority of what I want to say on the previous outlooks, so I don't really want to touch on these too much more. Let's go ahead and get into the things that really matter. So let's dive into Bitcoin. We have a lot of different stuff to cover on Bitcoin. Let's start off with high time frame first. So where we're at with high time frame is that I've talked about trend exhaustion. Definitely worth reviewing the more recent outlooks if you've missed them. Where we've talked about how the two previous impulses in the year were really strong, forming higher highs. This most recent one, where we had incredibly bullish news, it really only just traded back to its previous distribution high and built a range and then started to drift down from there. So we're more or less expecting it to play out somewhat similarly like Q2 did, where we bleed. And as we leave the summertime, and people start to get back to their desks and start clicking buttons again, anticipate the volatility to pick up and hopefully liquidity to come with that. So basically, if I'm was to doodle out the kind of plans that we've covered, there's kind of two expectations. So the trend is up, and I want to continue to lean into that. So even though I think that there's definitely signs to respect the fact that the trend is definitely exhausting, I'm going to continue to lean into the upside plays. So basically what I'm looking for is, either a mirror of what happened in Q2, which like we talked about on the last few streams is continuing to bleed down into the 28s, where the bears will likely start to lose momentum and it will likely start to round out. And from there, we're going to probably gamble on either a dead cat into resistance or supply, or upside continuation for fresh highs. So I think just like we talked about in Q2, we talked about this same exact type of setup. I think it's still plus EV to bet on the dead cat, even if it fails and it only trades up to like 29 or 30K. I still think that I want to participate in that long. So that's kind of the idea. I think that this is a little bit too obvious, just because I don't really expect it to just play out exactly how it did. So the two or three other kind of scenarios that we had talked about was the kind of the range reclaim. So if we start to just yeet back up into the previous range and reclaim the comp low, we could probably start to make fresh highs from there. I definitely don't think that that's really that likely. I think that the rounded out bottom and trading up into the dead cat is probably the most likely scenario. The other kind of scenario is that we don't really catch a real bid from here, and then we get a really weak dead cat from I think that this is going to be a demand zone no matter what. But I think that, instead of us getting a legitimate dead cat, it might be a really muted dead cat where it only trades up to like 28 or, something like that. So those are the kind of three scenarios I'm looking for on high time frame. The rounded out bottom into the dead cat, which could either result in just rejecting up here or, fresh highs up into the 34s. Or, the weaker dead cat or the range reclaim. Those are the three kind of scenarios I see playing out. In order of likelihood, I see the dead cats are probably most likely, which are going to, probably result in us eventually trading back down to the 25 region. And if the 25 region fails, then we look to the 20s from there. If we start to get back into the value above, the 29s, then I'm going to look a lot more optimistically and a lot more bullishly in the short term, expecting us to trade up to the 34K region. So that's pretty much it for the higher time frame. Let's get into the medium. So these kind of the directional plays that I'm looking for this week in order of likelihood. So, it's really pretty much a crapshoot 50-50 between one or two. I really marked out number one as number one just because it's a situation I would hope for. But who knows which way we're going to play out. It looks like we're starting to get aggressive selling off the open, but we could be getting a, classic get juked scenario. The Paragon members are all familiar with that setup that we run all the time. So let's get into it. So basically we've, broken from this, 4.5 week consolidation. The trend structure is pretty bearish right now. So if we get, a significant pop-up this week, especially, we could maybe get that because of the CPI. So most of the time following the CPI, regardless of how the numbers come in, you normally get some sort of rally following it, mostly just like from people unwinding hedges and stuff. If you get something like that where we can get a pop, squeeze shorts, I would almost certainly look to sell into that, especially if it's off the back of shorts closing out. So if one comes along, then I'm definitely going to take that. The other scenario is that we kind of just break down and start to accept. So we have a nice weekend comp. If we start to accept below the weekend comp for play number two, we could be looking at a breakdown short. The alternative scenario is 3. I consider this to be pretty unlikely at this point, with equities looking a little bit rough and the trend structure on Bitcoin looking really quite bearish right now. But it is always a possibility, so, you have to account for everything. If we start to reclaim this previous range, then, we want to get super bullish all the way, targeting 32 up to 34. So that's pretty much it for the medium time frame. So that's it for the corn. I covered pretty much everything. I might have left a couple things out here and there, but I got mostly what I want to talk about. Let's go ahead and get into shitcoins. So we're going to run through the shitcoin list, what I think is worth selling, what I think is worth buying, and we'll touch on a few other things here and there. For more information, check out the Paragon group with the link below, where I cover everything from how I trade to how you can develop your own style. So let's get into it. Let's start off with the bearish coins. So unfortunately, a lot of these bearish coins really have kind of exhausted themselves. They've really traded down a lot, so the setups really aren't as good anymore, but we're just going to cover them anyways. So Link was one of the ones that we were really targeting for shorts up as it traded into its composite high. It's now at the midpoint. The structuring and the immediate term is still pretty bearish on it, so it would not surprise me at all to see it trade into the $6 range. But the risk to reward on shorting it's pretty dog shit now, so I probably wouldn't be taking it myself. There's probably a couple other better ones we can cover. Pepe continues to be a pretty good one to short as well. Again, all these shorts that we're talking about are pretty exhausted. So I really, the only thing I would want to hold for any length of time would be something that actually popped up, because just shorting into them where they're at is really low, EV. So if any of these shitcoins give significant pops, which would likely be off the back of Bitcoin trading up, I might go ahead and short these alongside, that play number one that we're looking for with Bitcoin. So I think Pepe is still good to short. I've gone over this plan a bunch of times anyways, but we'll lightly touch on it, right? The anchored VWAP, quarterly VWAP, and the HVN, everything's pointing towards downside. So as long as structure continues to look like this, Pepe is a good short. BCH continues to be a good one. It's definitely getting into the region where I really want to short it beyond $2 or beyond 200, excuse me. But it still has a little bit of juice in it. So if it was to pop up, it's probably a good smackdown. XRP, another one, right? This thing, we had talked about the distribution that was building up here, and the structuring continues to be leaning towards the bearish side. So I think Ripple's probably a good short on a little pop up. Same story with XLM. XLM hasn't traded down as much, so I think that this is probably one of the best ones from a EV standpoint where it currently sits. So yeah, I think that that's pretty much it. Pretty much anything at the bottom of my list too that's on the trading list, almost all of these coins, I've been ignoring almost all of them, but pretty much all of them could probably be fit into the sell category. Basically, if they're not strong, they're weak, the way I look at it. So most shitcoins are still in a place where they could be sold. Again, to just keep driving home this key point though, I really only think that the only reason to hold them for any amount of time beyond, intraday for shorting is if you get some significant pops where shorts get kind of blown out, you kind of trade up in an irrational way, and then I think the EV is quite high on them. So let's go ahead and flip switches and get into things that are actually strong. So this RDNT coin, I've been going over for a couple of weeks now. I continue to really like this coin. It has all the narratives lined up that we've talked about in the Paragon, and I continue to think that it looks like a very clear bottoming structure. And when you tie in the structuring with the narratives that we've talked about, I think that it's probably only a matter of time before this is something that kind of rips up into the low volume node and potentially beyond. Doge is another coin that looks pretty reasonable. I really like this kind of clear trend structure that it's got going on. It's basically there's quite a few bottomed coins that look like this, but I think Doge is probably one of the better bets, alongside something like OP, really similar trend structuring off the bottom from this more recent nuke that we had back in June. So I think that this one's a decent one for continuation or spaghetti kind of plays. Tomo's back on the menu. So we've talked about Tomo a lot, the different kind of scenarios that we're playing out with it. But I really, more and more every time I look at this, I'm starting to lean towards us doing this kind of trend structuring again that we had in Q2. Everyone in the group knows that I loved longing this thing in quarter two. The only downside is it's definitely one of those low liquidity coins. So you got to be careful with how you position. You don't want to be, it's better to be undersized on a shitcoin like this, definitely, than oversized. If you have to hit the eject button on this, it's not going to feel good. But to be clear, I'm leaning this direction of the trend structure, continuing up to the $2 range. There's a couple other ones, maybe we'll touch on INJ really quickly. So this has been a coin that I've really liked to trade a lot this year. My gut feeling is that it's cooked right now. A lot of other coins have, in July had a lot more positive looking trend structure. So the fact that this one, it really looks like it's reaccepting into its yearly band, and it's probably going to trim back down to its yearly VWAP. If it starts to, have a positive looking weekly setup on the VWAP, then maybe I change my mind. But as it stands, I think that this one's probably going to look quite rough, to be honest. It doesn't actually even belong on this bottom list. It's more of an active kind of interest, something to just keep an eye on shitcoin. That's pretty much it. I don't really want to cover any of the other shitcoins. You guys are familiar with my list. Nothing, for the most part, most of the coins haven't really changed from the outlooks, from, either from the outlooks or from the streams. It's pretty much all the same stuff. The vast majority of coins look like, total dog shit and are probably going to continue to trend down. There's a few gems here and there. The main gems to pay attention to are these kind of first 5 at the top of the list. So RDNT, Doge, OP, Tomo, and Ant. Those are really the only golden coins that I really like. Apart from that, I'm going to look to scalp and trade the CPI actively. That's pretty much my plans for the week. So that's pretty much it. I think I covered everything I wanted to. If I didn't, I'll drop notes in the group. Cheers, everybody, and good luck.